Good morning. Thank you very much for standing by. Good to see you. I want to start with the betting scandal, if you will. We've been talking in the last half an hour to Chris Heaton-Harris for the government. He was pretty relaxed with the way it's being handled by the Prime Minister, but he was very concerned, actually, about Labour's involvement in all of this, saying that they perhaps could have been putting undue pressure on the Gambling Commission.
Yeah, I think he's got a bit of a cheek, actually, given that Rishi Sunak and the Conservative Party are trying to hide who's involved, duck scrutiny and accountability during a general election campaign, and hide behind the Gambling Commission rather than come up and take some responsibility. Rishi Sunak is the only person in this country who knew for certain when the election date would be and who he chose to share that information with. We already know that one of his closest parliamentary aides placed a bet, and he has accepted that and he's apologised for that. But from the Prime Minister, we've seen a total weakness and lack of leadership. And to now try and suggest that somehow we're doing something wrong by asking for transparency in an election campaign, I think people should start to question, what is it the Conservatives have to hide, and why are they so desperate to hide it?
First one always to say that there is due process and it has to be followed, innocent until proven guilty, etc. I mean, Rishi Sunak simply following the rules, isn't he?
Well, look, I mean, when in the past, we had Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner subjected to allegations and attacks. I mean, Keir and Angela both said very clearly, look, if we're found guilty of wrongdoing, we're going to resign. I mean, is Rishi Sunak saying that Conservative candidates at this election will resign if they're found to have broken the law and the Gambling Commission rules? Where does the buck stop? Where does the responsibility lie? And why isn't he just being honest with people about who's involved, what the allegations are? Because I think often in politics it's the cover-up that ends up being even worse than the crime. And so I do think the Prime Minister should be honest with people about who's suspected, who's under investigation, and what he plans to do about it. But as ever with Rishi Sunak, I'm afraid he's too weak to lead his party, let alone, to lead the country.
Is Labour being honest, talking about honesty with the British public about its approach on trans issues? A number of the papers this morning talking about reviews, if you do get elected, one on school curriculums and reintroducing multiple genders to school curriculums, and the other one on self-ID, making it easier for people to legally transition. Are you being completely honest about Labour's approach to all of this?
We are, and let me just spell out clearly on those two issues. Firstly, the review that's underway about guidance in schools is a review that the government has commissioned but hasn't finished because of the general election being called. And all our Shadow Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, has said is that we'll consider the responses to that review. But we're not interested in children being taught about multiple genders. Actually, we're more interested in this election about children being taught maths and science by qualified teachers. That's our priority. And on gender recognition law reform, let me be really clear about this. We have learned the lessons of the failure in Scotland. We do not think self-ID can work in law. We do believe that to obtain a gender recognition certificate, you should require a diagnosis from a qualified doctor, and so that's the simplification of the process we want to see, is about the bureaucracy. We are not in the business of introducing self-ID into law, because we saw in Scotland what happens when you legislate for good intentions but fail to take into account how well-intentioned laws for trans people could be used by people who are either taking the mick at best or have more sinister and ulterior motives at worst. We're not going to make the same mistakes as the SNP.
And there are people like J.K. Rowling, who's come out over the weekend saying she simply cannot trust Labour to protect women's spaces, to protect hard-fought women's rights. That's got to be a hugely damaging call from her.
Yeah, I was really gutted, actually, with what J.K. Rowling said, but we have to take the criticism on the chin and work with people to demonstrate that we're in a good place on this as a party. I think we have listened and genuinely listened to the debate that's been taking place on this, and I feel actually really optimistic that we can find a way through that treats trans people in our country with the dignity, the respect, the support and care that they deserve, without compromising on the sex-based rights of women, whether that's women's spaces, women's voices, women's rights. I'm sure we can find a way forward. In fact, the last Labour government, when we designed the Equality Act, we enshrined those single-sex exemptions for women in law. We're determined to protect them if we're in government after the next general election.
Well, Wes, well done you, because that's pretty straight talking, and maybe that's just what we need. We need somebody who, you know, will be in any future government, likely government, to say it as it is, and maybe J.K. Rowling needs to have a conversation with you at the end of the day. But I thought you were very clear about all of that, so well done on that. What I'm not so clear about is why on this hottest day of the year, and this most beautiful day, and whatever, that you look as if you're inside a wardrobe this morning, a very dark oak. Why? You look like the Prince of Darkness this morning. I'm looking at him saying, where is he?
Yeah. Look, let me show you the real glamour of politics, right? Here I am in the Holiday Inn in Salford because there are some daft rules around the media city that the BBC have, which means that, you know, GB News and, you know, some of your competitors, I won't name them on your channel, you know, are basically have to book rooms in a hotel like this. And because it is sunny outside, we've had to pull the curtain across, so it does look like I'm just sort of in a broom cupboard somewhere. So it's not all glamour on the election campaign trail, you know.
No, that explains a lot. Well, listen,
yeah, we can blame the BBC.